everybody, and welcome back to Nerd Variety. I am Hannah, and I am joined by Hunter
Hey, what's up?
and Josh.
I'm here. What's up?
Yeah, and I, apparently I'm not clever enough to come up with weird, nicknames to go after our names, but, maybe we'll get there someday.
One day.
Maybe.
I hope not.
I just dream I can live up to Josh's creativity, honestly.
Just gotta roll with stuff sometimes.
So this week in theme with our spooky Halloweeny leading up to topics, we're going to be talking about spooky video games. But first, Josh, you went to, I already forgot the name of the convention, but it was cool, right?
Yes, I went to the Walker Stalker convention that they host in downtown Atlanta. They had it at the World Congress Center. And it's as the name suggests, inspired by The Walking Dead. Usually they have a lot of cast members show up for photo ops and autographs, and a lot of cool vendors, and they interview the cast and crew, and they have other people there. It was a little quiet this year, but my friends and I still had a good time. A lot of good vendors. I bought a couple things, a book about the rise of the governor, and then also bought a cool Negan shirt. But it was really fun. I got to meet Michael Rooker. Got to meet Pom Klementif, who plays Mantis in Guardians.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were really cool. And I got to meet and I got a picture with Matthew Lillard, who plays and voices Shaggy. Yeah, I was like, Zoinks, man, it's you. He thought that was funny too.
Cool.
Yeah. There were some Game of Thrones actors who had a nice little panel. Theon, the original Night King, and Euron, who, if you've ever watched Game of Thrones and you've seen Euron, he's the same. He's the same character that he plays. Funny, wisecracking dude. Yeah. Mm. And there was also the voices. Got to meet the voices of Lee and Clementine from the Walking Dead Telltale game. They were really cool. They actually signed my definitive copy of The Walking Dead. Had all 4 episodes, and they were really glad that they were
5 episodes.
Finish it.
There are 5 episodes per season.
I mean, the entirety of the game. All the seasons were in.
All seasons. Okay,
yeah,
so there's 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Is there? Yeah.
And with bonus content.
Well. Yeah. There's also the miniseries, but
I've only played the first one.
There's the Michonne miniseries that's 3 episodes, but
yeah. I wanted to play more, but I haven't only been able to get my hands on the first one. Now I can play all of them, and I'm really excited to play as Michonne too. She's cool.
Yeah, she's cool.
Yeah, but it was a really good time, and it's a good little adventure for the weekend.
So I did want to ask this question, and it serves as a good segue into our main topic for tonight. Do you guys consider those Walking Dead Telltale games horror games?
I mean, to an extent, sure.
I feel like they're definitely more psychological horror.
Yeah.
Because again, my biggest praise of the Telltale games has been and I remember it very distinctly with Batman especially, it was the amount of stress I felt about having to make the decisions I had to make. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like combining that with the zombie apocalypse sort of stuff, and definitely an amount of blood and gore, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I would say it's horror, but I feel like it's getting into the genre.
It's like a drama, really going with the show as well. Having to make those tough choices and everything. Mm-hmm. I think it's good. It's definitely a narrative game, story game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The characters that you get attached to, you can make decisions where they die, and you actually, people talked about how they felt something when this character died, and it does, like you mentioned, the anxiety that you can get from making decisions.
Mm-hmm.
That Walking Dead Telltale is definitely a horror game, I would say.
Yeah, and there's definitely also some relatively intense gore elements.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just strictly for The Walking Dead. I distinctly remember in Tales from the Borderlands having to scoop guys' eye out with a spoon.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's pretty standard Borderlands stuff.
It is, but that didn't make it better. So there's definitely an aspect of that as well.
So I don't need to play Borderlands, right?
The Borderlands, they're all fantastic.
I mean,
yeah.
They're all great. They're different levels of great, but they're all great. Yeah, Hannah got bored with the third one apparently. I don't know. Or maybe she just played too much too quick.
Yeah, I just needed a break.
Yeah.
Which, now they're doing their Halloween thing, which I haven't checked out, but
Not the point.
Yeah, I know. But I guess it does depend, or I guess we haven't really established quite what is considered a horror video game, like what makes a game a horror game.
Right. Yeah, well, and I was going to ask the question, what's the scariest game you guys have ever played? And I was looking through my Steam list, and I don't have a lot of scary games.
So
for a reason.
I've definitely played some scary games.
I've watched people play a lot of scary games.
Yeah, so I guess it depends. There's different kinds of scary. One game that I hate, and if anybody watched my stream last year, some of my Halloween streams last year, they'll probably know it's Outlast.
Yeah.
Screw those games. Screw that
I've
game.
Never
I never
played
the second one.
But
and
I've seen all the way through.
Like, it's scary, but it's also it stresses me out so much. And because it's one of those, like, you can only really see for a large part of the game, you can only see when you have the camera and you have the night vision on, and it drains your battery. So if you need to take your time doing something, you can't really take your time. You either have to do it in the dark, you have to be well hidden, and you have to be very patient, or you just have to keep finding batteries, and you kind of got to rush through it.
There's definitely like a another level of horror added to a game when you have absolutely no means of self-defense.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the biggest things with Outlast is like you can run and you can hide or you can die. Right, I think is what it even says in the opening, intro. So I feel like there are some, first-person shooter horror games kind of stuff, but not being able to defend yourself is the worst.
Yeah. Although I will say another game along those lines that is pretty new that I actually just beat because it's on Game Pass, Xbox Game Pass, was Blair Witch.
Yeah.
Now, going into it, I still haven't actually watched the Blair Witch Project ever. But the game, like, I enjoyed it. It reminds me quite a bit of a few different games. A little bit of Alan Wake, which I haven't beaten that game, but I played some of it. And a good bit of Outlast as well. But you don't have to recharge your camera. And it's not like that kind of thing all the time. Obviously, being Blair Witch, they do incorporate some of the videotape stuff going on, but it tells a good story. I think it's pretty intense. It felt also very similar to Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. If you're aware of that. They get really deep into like psychosis in Hellblade, whereas they kind of deliver a very similar experience in kind of exploring a character with PTSD. And he has like a dog, like I guess a security dog, whatever they call it. Yeah. And he's great. He's a good boy. And yeah, so like the whole experience is pretty good. And I also found that while I did have a couple times where I just like jumped and was scared, a lot of there's definitely an end. I'm not going to spoil anything, but there was a thing near the end where there's an enemy who's going to kill you like instantly if you do certain things, if you mess up. But to me, whenever I did mess up and got caught and attacked by him, that wasn't the scary thing. Like, and I think it was because I knew it was coming, but it was, the tension around everything leading up to it. Like, you're not allowed to look at him, and sometimes you have to walk like right past, and you have to like very intentionally look away or look down, but walk like right past him, and it scared the crap out of me, and I loved it.
That actually reminds me of Hunter and I have been playing this game called We Were Here. And I don't know if I would put it in the horror genre. It definitely has really, really good atmosphere.
Yeah.
But there was a part where a monster came towards me, and I didn't know what it was, and it was coming very slowly. I didn't know why it was advancing, and Hunter will attest, I had like a breakdown of sorts.
Yeah, of sorts.
I was like completely not functioning, and like just it was bad. But it was really like
you're really experiencing it. You're experiencing it, like
so.
But it was like nothing. But I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, it was creepy.
It's really creepy. It's this big black like bat creature.
It's a marionette.
Yeah, on strings with like glowing eyes that slowly comes towards you, and you don't know why it's coming towards you. Is it just on a timer? Is it because Hunter keeps screwing stuff up?
Probably.
I don't know.
But like, and the thing about the game is like it's a cooperative puzzle game. So like I see some things and Hannah sees some things, and we have to communicate and, figure out puzzles on either end.
Yeah. So I'm completely alone. I'm talking to Hunter through this walkie-talkie. I'm like, something's coming towards me.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, Hannah, you need to give me information on what I need to do. It's like, oh God, this thing is here. It's coming on me. It's like, Hannah, pull yourself together.
I was a mess.
Yeah.
But that idea of like not knowing what's going on, not being able to defend yourself, not being able to look at something, right? Just woof. All of it's really intense.
And I think
co-op experience with a fun co-op horror experience. I remember Dead Space. It's one of the ones I mainly play horror games I've played before. But Dead Space 3 introduced a 2-player system, even though it wasn't like co-op. It wasn't pure co-op. It had a little bit of you would work with the other guy sometimes, and he would go out by himself. But yeah, I think that whole co-op thing is a nice new element, so you can experience the fear together.
Yeah, and I mean, now I haven't personally played Dead Space 3. Honestly, I think I've only ever played. Well, I may have played like a demo for Dead Space 3 or whatever, but I've only played the first one, and I haven't even finished that, honestly. I want to. I like it, but what I've heard from 3 is that it kind of cuts down on the horror, and it's more of an action game.
Yeah, it goes into the whole. You're climbing up a mountain, and it's not that surreal feeling of, oh, I'm in the ship. Oh God, they can come out for whenever, and I really have to pay attention and to make sure that I've got ammunition and I've got tools and I can craft something, because if I'm not prepped, then they're going to come at me. I'm going to have to swing wildly or stomp them to death to survive. And it's just it was fun in college playing that with the lights off.
Yeah, and I think most horror games are obviously best played with the lights off. Blair Witch had to do it with the lights off.
I think the only
all the way up.
I think the only like legitimate horror game I've ever played, like with the lights off and everything, was Slender back in the day.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was a good one.
It was creepy.
Those were good. I
haven't played that.
Yeah, I haven't gone back to play any of it in a while. There were a few of those, right?
I think so.
I know Slender, The Arrival.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I just appreciate those games for the simplicity of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? It's like you do not have to throw a lot of stuff into a game to make it a good horror game and to make it difficult and fun and terrifying.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot going on, but not really.
Yeah, you don't need a big score. You don't need, a whole lot of moving parts, or
or even really great graphics.
A big weapons loadout or complicated epic.
Mm-hmm.
You just need a simple, paranoia. Simple, if you can cause some paranoia, make some have a mystery in there. You're good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's one thing that is that probably works best in horror games, especially just having a more simplistic design to a game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
And
sorry, were you gonna still talk about that? No. All right. Well, I just lost my train of thought because.
Okay, then I'll go. I really appreciate, especially, I said before, atmosphere, and I've in kind of like doing research and looking at what games I have played. I haven't played a lot of like games with jump scares. I play a lot of stuff that either is like stressful for some reason, like the Telltale games, or has really good atmosphere. And We Were Here is a really good example of that, because like nothing bad happens really the whole time. Like there's the marionette, and like sometimes the floor falls out from underneath you and you fall into lava. But there's no jump scares at all.
That's a little more like just standard kind of timed puzzle games.
Yeah, but it's so creepy, and like there's like this constantly changing music that's like sometimes sounds like it has footsteps in the background, and like they just done a really, like, that game could be so different, but they just made the atmosphere in such a way that it's just kind of constantly unsettling.
Yeah, like, and I don't know, do you remember in the first one, there was that, like, when I was going through the halls in that first, like, maze, like, I see something, and I'm like, wait, what was that?
You see a person around the corner?
I just saw a figure, like, sprint past this opening here.
You never see them again. You never get jump scared. When you do die, it's like, it fades to black, and it's like, you died. Yeah. But, like, the whole thing is just really creepy, and it's really, really well done, especially because it has actually a pretty cartoonish art style.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. My only complaint about it, it's more so a complaint, although we're not really doing reviews, but my only complaint about the second one really is that it's short. I don't see a lot of replay value in it, and the second one costs $10 on Steam.
Yeah, everyone should go play the first one because it's free.
First one is free, yeah.
So go play it.
But yeah, and sorry, actually, Josh, I don't want to take up too much time. If you want to take a turn, I tend to talk a lot.
I was going to mention, we're talking about something kind of simplistic but fun. This one does have his fair share of a lot of jump scares, and it's kind of how you die. Emily Wants to Play.
I've heard
of it.
Watched
a lot of
I'm familiar.
playthroughs of the first one and the second one, and it's even just watching it, seeing the creature. There's a puppet, a clown, a doll. There's Kiki. I'm not sure what Kiki is.
Yeah.
I just remember the person's playing, screaming about Kiki, and then there's Emily. And the person has to remember how to interact with each doll while they're trying to find a mystery of how to get out of the house. And it's defined levels, because each level is an hour in the game, from 11 to 6 a.m. So it's you're in the house for that period. You can tell like how time goes by, and it's the jump scares.
Yeah, so I haven't played that or this other game, but it sounds. I've seen Five Nights at Freddy's, and it sounds very similar.
Yeah, I was gonna relate it.
Five Nights.
Yeah, I think the only similarity I can think of is this idea of like, you have different characters and you have to remember how to deal with each one.
Yeah,
that's, I feel like, the biggest similarity.
And it's kind of you're waiting it out or something.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, just trying to survive. Yeah.
Man.
Which is another sort of interesting genre, right? So you have sort of the ones where you can defend yourself, like a FPS, or you have ones where you have to like free roam, but you have to escape or you have to hide, and then there's ones where you just have to wait.
Yeah.
And that's like a whole other level of terrifying.
Yeah, and I do think in general, obviously not across all horror games, but I think a good element that shows up a lot in many horror games is resource management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that comes up a lot because it does add to the stress, the tension, all that, like, okay, I need to survive this, but I only have so much stuff that I can work with until basically I'm SOL and I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
Kind of like The Last of Us is kind of in there. That's another one that I would almost put in the same kind of somewhat questionable area as like Telltale's Walking Dead, where it's more probably a drama kind of, maybe even an action game, sort of like Dead Space 3, but it's definitely got its like, it's essentially a zombie thing and still has that kind of stuff going for it.
You have to survive, and you obviously have to scavenge for resources and make sure you have enough to use because stuff. I haven't played the game myself, but can you get injured and you have to heal yourself with first aid kits or
okay. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. It's a good game.
I need to play it.
It really does feel like it's in a weird category where it's like almost horror but not quite scary enough. But action, drama, and thriller, none of them really fit the bill.
Yeah.
With like what it is.
It's kind of, I guess, a split genre. Like a slash genre.
What about
it's PS4 exclusive or PlayStation exclusive.
What about games that are based off of movies? Alien had a lot of video games. One was I remember two. One was Colonial Marines, but I heard that.
God, that was one of the biggest disappointments. I was so excited when that was announced leading up to release. I never played it because I heard of how terrible it was, and I'm like,
But I love those movies, and like going back to the first one, the first Alien movie. It was, it's in the ship, and there's not really much you can do to defend yourself. But I think they did have a good game, Alien Isolation, and captured the spirit of the first one or the movies better. Than
I love the first Alien movie. I haven't seen all of them. But I saw Alien and Aliens, the second one, which both great movies. They are pretty different though. Aliens, I would say, is one of those two, kind of like, I think you can almost relate it to kind of the style of, well, maybe like Dead Space 3 or we were saying, where it's horror, but it's more action heavy than the first one, but it's still good horror.
I feel like we've gotten to a point in technology where if you're trying to create a story and the best medium for the story is a video game and you turn it into a video game, it's because the best medium for the story wasn't a movie and vice versa.
Yeah.
Like, we have a lot of people who try and bridge the gap, and it's like, there's a gap for a reason.
Yeah.
Like, they serve very different purposes.
Yeah.
So I feel like, in general, we haven't had a lot of success at going either direction.
We could have a whole conversation on adaptations. I think that'd be good at some other point.
The good, the bad, the burn it with fire.
Speaking of new technology, I did also want to mention the this very recent sort of thing, which is horror games like actually requiring you to do something. Like okay, so the best example I can think of is Until Dawn. If you guys are familiar.
I'm familiar, not with gameplay mechanic wise.
Yeah, really. So Until Dawn, the main enemy that you're fighting are the Wendigos, and they can only see you when you're moving. And so I think it was a PlayStation 4 game where they have like the motion sensing in the controllers.
Yeah.
And so when there's a Wendigo in the room, you literally cannot move. Like, they force the player to be stationary, and then in the sequel, it's not really a sequel. It's like the
there's like the DLC Rush of Blood.
No, it's
no
Man of Medan.
Oh, okay.
You might be thinking of a different thing than I am.
Well, Rush of Blood is like the DLC for Until Dawn.
Sure, I don't know. Anyway, in Man of Medan, they have this thing where you have to stay calm, and you have to it's essentially just a rhythm game. Right? But there is an element of you have to stay calm if you're going to do well at a rhythm game. Right? Because it's like the heartbeat and you have to dun 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 dun, and you as a player have to stay calm. And there's games where, because on PC most people who are playing are recording or they have a mic connected to something and they actually pick up your voice and you have to be quiet in order to not alert the creature to your presence.
I do that even when it's not required.
True.
Blair Witch, Alien Isolation, Outlast.
But always knowing that it is required adds another level of stress.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it's definitely something really cool that we've been doing, and hasn't really been something we've been capable of doing for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But it's now like you're seeing a lot more of it in newer games. I think it's really, really awesome.
Do we know of any VR horror games?
Well, again, if we want to consider We Were Here horror game, it is VR.
Was
well.
it? No, Resident Evil 7 has a VR version.
Ooh, cool.
It does, I believe, yeah.
Which I don't ever want to play.
No, I don't have VR.
Really ever want to play Resident Evil 7.
It's fantastic. That is a fantastic horror game. That's
I know.
like the only one.
I watched it all the way through.
That's the only one from last year that I actually finished streaming.
But I'm the kind of person, when I watch someone play that game, I like have my hand on the pause button and I'm like, pause. Play pause.
It's pretty scary.
Turn down the volume, like minimum volume.
Turn some lights on in here.
Yeah. Get my cat.
Yeah. But you know, just speaking of games that are like horror games that are like interactive, well, okay, you know, you actually have to kind of do something outside of the game, sort of. That makes me think of you know, the other one of the other games we were playing this past week, Hannah, Deceit, which I hadn't heard anything about until I started looking for horror games.
Yeah, we were looking for free multiplayer horror games, and we found Deceit.
Yeah, Deceit came up. Have you heard of it at all, Josh?
Oh no, I was more impressed that you found a free.
We were here in Deceit.
We were here, Deceit. Maybe a couple others, I don't know.
Yeah.
None that we actually checked out, but
nope.
Deceit is really. I thought it was really interesting. It's basically Mafia online.
And on steroids.
Yeah. Mafia, like the card game, you know, so like, or
One Night Ultimate Werewolf.
Yeah, I may have. I think I explained it to you, Josh. There was a game that we had when we were living together. Well, I think it was Taylor's game, but you know, it's like Infected or something. So
yeah, Dark. I think it was Dark. Was it Dark Moon?
Yeah, something like that.
Moon.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So again, there's like, Hannah, do you even remember how many players altogether there were?
6.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking it was around 6. And so like you're in this little area for the first thing, and it, you know, you kind of keep expanding outward as you go on in the game. And 2 people are infected, but nobody else knows who except for those 2 infected. And you're kind of looking around, they're trying to power up and eventually take out everybody else, but not get noticed, obviously. And then everybody else is kind of just trying to survive and escape. And I don't remember if they have to kill the infected.
No, you don't have to. No.
But
no, yeah, but everyone's suspicious of everybody all the time, and they have guns.
Yeah, everybody has guns. You can do other things to
people just shoot people
like
sometimes.
Traps and stuff. Yeah. We played a game. Hannah thought these guys were clever. They were just jerks. And also
they were clever.
No, they were.
Patrick agrees with me now. We've talked about it, and he's like, "No, it was good strategy. It was just annoying."
We'll get to that another time, but they were just jerks.
They were clever jerks.
No. And it wasn't even their attitudes that was bothering me so much. It was that they were distorting so freaking much in their microphones, and it was the worst kind of quality. I couldn't take it. So I think I tried shooting one of them or something. Or no, I threatened to kill them to shoot their character, and then they like came and shot me, and then another one came and shot me, and another one came and shot me, and so I was like, okay.
You shouldn't have threatened them, Hunter.
Well, they were threatening everybody else. I don't know. I'm not going to stick on that, but I think it's a fun game. We were also talking, I would love it if like we could get just 6 of us to play the game.
6 people that we know.
Yeah. I would love that.
Possible.
Yeah. Ben, it's a fairly like it's a pretty simple game. I don't know how old it is, but I don't know that a lot of people play it, which is one reason I would like to find a good solid group of 6 people so we would know that.
And it's another one that's in a weird category, or I don't really know if I would say it's horror, but it definitely has horror elements, and it definitely is stressful.
Like I would say it's horror, but again, it's a multiplayer thing. It's a multiplayer only, so it's a weird kind of horror.
Yeah. Well, and nothing is really scripted. which makes it interesting.
Yeah. And there are some great moments in there. I think I had like the best moment when we were, because once you kill somebody, they can't talk, obviously. And so it was like me and one other person. We got to the very end without anybody knowing it. And then once we were down to like 1 or 2 survivors, we were like, they can't do anything to us. And then then we got to like the one we cornered them. We're like, yeah, you're not going anywhere. And we just destroyed them. It was great.
Anyway, I don't know if Josh ever got a definitive answer from you on what's the scariest game you've ever played.
Oh, I mean, I would say Dead Space.
Dead Space
1 and 2, because of I played them with the lights off and the sound all the way up, and I had never played anything like that before. Usually, they were fun games, just action, racing, fighting, beat 'em up games, and that was one of the first ones I played, and it terrified me.
How does it? Because I'm not familiar. How does it compare to something like Doom?
I think Doom is more of a visual thing. From what I've seen, it's not so much. It's like, oh, all these scary monsters and you're in hell, and it's not a, I'm being hunted, or they're watching me, or this. It's more of a. And the monster's a little more grotesque because you can see someone turn into them, and Dead Space 2 had the babies that were
gotcha.
Nice touch.
Because from what you described, it sounds similar, but I feel like it sounds like the main difference is that
it's much slower paced.
Yeah.
Sure. And it just also sounds like a big difference is that Doom guy is just badass.
Yeah. True.
And you don't really feel a lot of fear when you play as Doom
Isaac's
guy.
pretty badass, I think.
Isaac is badass, but he's also an engineer. He's not a soldier.
Yeah. You feel a little bit indestructible when you're playing as Doom guy.
Yeah. Well, I have to play that with you someday, Hannah. Dead Space.
It's great.
Let you experience it. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I'd be down.
Yeah. I was thinking of some more, Hunter, some lighter horror games that are horror themed but fun, like Castlevania. I know there's one, and like we talked about zombies last week, like Left 4 Dead.
Left 4 Dead. It's good. Yeah. Again, and that I also talked about World War Z, the game. I think it's very similar. Like if you've not played it, it is very similar to Left 4 Dead. Like it's different, obviously. Like it's third person, first of all, but it's still very similar. You're trying to complete objectives if you're doing like the campaign. And, it's multiplayer, and you got waves of zombies, different kinds of zombies, some that you have to take out. And when they do, some like explode. You have like some screechers that you have to kill before they attract too many. And then you get like these, like one of the, probably their biggest things is, like you may have seen in the movie, I still haven't seen it, but, you get like these huge waves of massive waves of zombies that you have to take out. And, it's I mean it's cool, I think. I wouldn't pay for it, but
I want to list a couple what I would consider to be honorable mentions.
Okay.
And just mostly out of curiosity, if you guys have heard of them. The first one I would say would be Subnautica.
I've heard of it.
Subnautica, I'm putting on my honorable mentions list just because it's essentially a very advanced graphics underwater Minecraft of sorts, right? Where you're running around and you're doing, collecting of materials, and you're building bases and trying to survive and explore, except you're in the ocean and there's giant, silent, terrifying creatures that will murder you almost instantly. And so and the fact that you're just in the ocean makes the whole thing very open and deep, and everything's big and unknown. You're on an alien planet, first of all, so they're not normal ocean creatures. They're alien ocean creatures.
What's this game called again?
It's Subnautica. It's really good.
I've definitely heard of it.
And I wouldn't say it's a horror game, but it definitely can be really scary at times.
Do you land on the planet and then you're kind of floating along?
Yeah, your ship crashes on the planet. Yeah, and you have to swim around in the ocean and find materials and try to not drown and try not get eaten.
Yeah.
So on and so forth.
Survival horror.
Yeah.
I saw Taylor playing that, Hunter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's good. Your computer will take a lot to run it, but it's amazing. And it also has a VR, which
I will probably get it on Xbox One then.
I don't know if you can get it on Xbox One.
Yeah. That's what I was looking at.
So I would one game that I've yet to really talk about, but definitely a horror game. Fantastic game, one of my favorites. Right behind me on my screen is Bloodborne. Bloodborne is a fantastic game. I would definitely even call it a horror game. It's in the Soulsborne series of games. Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Sekiro now, which it's hard to find a name that includes that. But so Bloodborne, it's great. It's got a very it's got a very, I don't know, a tense feeling to it. Like if you're playing it for the first time, like you never know when an enemy's going to be around the corner, and then it'll jump out at you and destroy you. But and so there's a lot of great stuff to it, and it's very Lovecraftian. You can see a lot of H.P. Lovecraft influences in it. Very creepy.
Yeah.
I would. And, going back through it again recently, I would almost include like just the Dark Souls games in that, just because they have, the shock factor in a lot of it, like the unknown, you don't really know what's happening.
Yeah,
and
I was always confused.
Yeah, and especially if you like go up to a chest and it's a mimic, that can scare the crap out of you if you're not expecting it.
Yeah, you don't expect the treasure chest to eat you alive. No.
Yeah, good times.
Like you open it up, it's got all these teeth, a tongue, and it reaches out its arms, grabs you, and brings you in there and chomps on you for a few seconds.
Tasty.
Good times. Yeah. Well, we need to start wrapping up, but I have one more honorable mention that I want to run by you guys. Have either of you ever heard of Doki Doki Literature Club?
I have heard of it. I don't know if it's because you mentioned it or if I saw it on like some other video, but I remember hearing the name of it. Yes.
It's crazy. It's very Uncanny Valley, and it's like a virtual novel. Your choices determine the ending kind of game, except they don't. Like, so as you go on, you kind of the basic thing is you actually have no control over anything, and all the other characters are just kind of slowly losing their minds.
Okay.
Yeah. It's worth looking into. It was another game that caused an emotional breakdown of sorts in me. Definitely worthwhile, but not for the faint of heart, honestly.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
One that
I like games that have a nice twist like that to it.
Ugh, it's rough, buddy. It's rough.
So there are plenty of other horror games I know I'm leaving out. Like,
but we don't have time to talk about
one that I just thought of was System Shock. I've only played a little bit of System Shock 2, but that's definitely a horror game. A lot more that I've heard of than I've played. But I also, when we were talking about one of these, I don't remember what exactly brought it on, but I started to think I could almost, it's definitely not in the genre, but I could almost see Mass Effect as a horror game. Yeah. It's got some elements to it.
I don't know. But we have to wrap up. I know we could talk about this forever, but we got to be done. So, Hunter, what are we talking about next week?
So next week, for our final horror-themed episode for the year, we will be discussing just horror as a genre and how it fits into the sci-fi fantasy nerd culture.
Yep. So be looking forward to that. And until next time, this has been Nerd Variety signing off.